There's a really old teaching floating around in this world that suggests that someone has been hiding the most powerful secret in the universe from you. And today, countless people swear that this is true. If you just know this secret, you can actually bend the whole universe in your direction. On today's show, I'm going to show you why they're dead wrong. My pagan ancestors used to look up at the night sky and find some kind of meaning up there. My generation today tends to look at the stars and just think of them in terms of pure physics, massive furnaces driven by the process of stellar nucleosynthesis. But my pagan ancestors, they saw something different. They noticed the rhythms of the universe, how heavenly bodies moved in a procession so regular you could use them as an astronomical calendar to mark the precise time of year. When certain stars appeared just above the horizon, it was time to plant. And when other stars took their place, it was time for something else. But then my ancestors also developed this idea that somehow our lives corresponded to what was happening up there in the heavens. An idea that still persists today in the world of astrology. They said if you were born at a certain time of year under the sign of a certain constellation, it said something about your personality and your proclivities. If one of the planets was moving through a particular constellation, it was considered a message, a sign of the times. Now to us, that all seems kind of childish, as if our ancestors were unthinking simpletons who needed to make up silly stories to explain the natural world. I mean, how else would you explain the fact that most people way back when worshiped the sun, at some point in history? Except for the fact that they didn't really do those kinds of things. I know, they had sun gods and there were temples to the sun, but what they were actually doing was not quite as simple as we make it sound. The ancient pagans didn't really think of the sun, the moon, and the planets and the stars as celestial deities. They thought of them more like special portals to the spirit world that existed out there just beyond the grasp of our physical senses. These people believed that in the beginning the universe wasn't a physical, material place at all. It just happened to become physical through an unfortunate series of events. And in the process, it trapped the likes of you and me in these physical bodies. This is why you find some of the pagan philosophers suggesting that death is probably a good thing, because it's going to release you from this painful physical existence we have right now and just return you to the universe, to your original state as a spirit being. In the beginning, these people said the entire universe was nothing but spirit, and the only thing that really existed out there was the mind of God. But then that mind of God started to congeal into a fine mist, and then that mist became particles, and eventually we got the material universe as you find it today. But then they said that the entire point of our human existence now is to find our way back out of this physical existence to return to the great mind of God. One of the more famous metaphors they used was to compare this mind of God to a fire, and all of us, they said, were sparks that kind of leapt out of the fireplace into a state of being that wasn't supposed to happen. In some accounts, the reason the world happens to be a really tough place to live is because some lesser being actually did the work of creating this physical world and he botched it. The pure mind of God, these pagans said, would never create this place. And so, the sun, the moon, and the stars were like windows that allowed you to communicate with the great mind of the universe. They were a go-between. They didn't actually think of these things as sentient beings. Now, that isn't going to be the way you're going to find the story being taught in the pages of everyday pagan mythology, but in many of the ancient elite mystery schools, which were only open to a handful of enlightened people, that's actually what they taught. And part of that way of thinking created a system of correspondence, where the objects in the sky were said to correspond to the various activities that happen here on Earth. And you could learn about the nature of reality and the workings of the world by studying those movements in the heavens. Furthermore, some of these ancient pagans also said that the various heavenly bodies they were studying actually corresponded to the various parts of our human bodies. So, for example, the planet Venus was said to govern your kidneys, and it was also the planet of desire. Mars was the planet of war, which governed your martial passions and the red blood that courses through your veins, and so on. There was a heavenly correspondence for almost everything that happened here on Earth. And while I know there are people who will dispute this, underneath this system of belief there was an assumption that the universe revolves around us, around the human race. We thought we were the center of existence, the whole point of the universe. And even though there was a higher mind out there somewhere, they taught we're part of that higher mind and we're destined to return to our former status. I'm convinced this is one of the reasons that people like Copernicus and Galileo met with such resistance when they suggested that the Earth was not the center of the universe. I mean, there's no doubt at all. They also attracted the wrath of the official church when they spoke about heliocentrism. I mean, that's the story we all learn. And they got heat from the church because they were challenging a number of theological conventions that the medieval church absolutely relied on. But personally, I'm not convinced the Catholic Church was the only group that didn't like what they were hearing. Any system of belief that establishes us, the human race, as the central point of the universe would be very troubled to hear that maybe we didn't actually occupy center stage, physically speaking. I mean, I can only imagine what kinds of mental anguish they would have to go through if they had also at that time become aware that our solar system isn't even at the center of our galaxy, but it's way out on the edge. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about from a relatively recent and somewhat popular teacher of this ancient pagan way of thinking. Manly P. Hall was a well-known practitioner of the occult back in the 20th century, not that long ago. And most of his writings borrowed heavily from the alchemists of the Middle Ages and the ancient pagans who gave the alchemists their ideas. Here's what Manly P. Hall said as he wrote about the significance of the human body. He says, "The mysteries of every nation taught that the laws, elements, and powers of the universe were epitomized in the human constitution, that everything which existed outside of man had its analog within man." He continues a little further on. He says, "The early philosophers turned their attention from the inconceivable divinity to man himself, within the narrow confines of whose nature they found manifested all the mysteries of the external spheres. As the natural outgrowth of this practice, there was fabricated a secret theological system in which God was considered as the grand man and, conversely, man as the little God. Continuing this analogy, the universe was regarded as a man and, conversely, man as a miniature universe." Now, Mr. Hall certainly put his own twist on all these ancient secret teachings, just like other fairly recent esoteric teachers like Madame Blavatsky, the founder of Theosophy. But the basic ideas are all there, and they really do stretch all the way back to very ancient times. In fact, a lot of these ideas come from ancient Egypt, and famous Greek thinkers like Pythagoras and Plato borrowed very heavily from the Egyptians, and they admit it. This kind of thinking still puts us at the center of the universe, even though it does acknowledge some kind of higher power, a supreme being. But it teaches we are the universe, and the universe is us. We are God, and God is us. It's a system of belief that does not correspond to the teachings of the Bible, even though you will find elements of this that have crept into Christian thinking over the centuries, thanks to the way that Christians were so heavily influenced by the convergence of pagan and biblical beliefs in the ancient city of Alexandria. And in recent years, I've noticed more and more of this kind of thinking making a bit of a comeback right here in the modern West. So, don't go away. I'm going to come right back and show you what I mean and why I think the Christian scriptures are a bit of an antidote for some really messed up thinking.
Life can throw a lot at us. Sometimes we don't have all the answers. But that's where the Bible comes in. It's our guide to a more fulfilling life. Here at the Voice of Prophecy, we've created the Discover Bible Guides to be your guide to the Bible. They're designed to be simple, easy to use, and provide answers to many of life's toughest questions. And they're absolutely free. So jump online now, or give us a call and start your journey of discovery.
Back in 2006, there was suddenly a new book in the self-help section of most bookstores, and it was selling like hotcakes. It was the same year that the Vinci Code came out, and it made the New York Times bestseller list. And oddly enough, both of these books were kind of pushing the same, well, I'll just call it nonsense. The Da Vinci Code was a work of fiction, even though some people didn't really realize that. And even though it was fiction, it was still trying to, well, push off this subtle idea. It was trying to convince people that this ancient pagan way of thinking that we've been talking about is the real secret teaching of Christianity. Dan Brown suggests that the Western Church after Constantine perverted the real scriptures and twisted them into what is now modern Christian thinking. And again, let me just say that I'm glad they were honest enough to mark this book as fiction, because that's what it is. Now, the other book that was selling really well that year was Rhonda Byrne's The Secret, which was also made into a movie. And I'm sure it was also made into a big pile of cash for Rhonda Byrne. This book preaches something called the law of attraction. And the basic idea behind this is the notion that the universe somehow answers to you. All you really need to do, she says, is basically tell the universe what you want, focus your thoughts on it, and then it will happen. Let me give you a taste of this from the very first chapter, where she summarizes what her secret is. Here's what she writes. Thoughts are magnetic, and thoughts have a frequency. As you think, those thoughts are sent out into the universe, and they magnetically attract all like things that are on the same frequency. Everything sent out returns to the source, and that source is you. She continues. You are a human transmission tower, and you are more powerful than any television tower created on Earth. You are the most powerful transmission tower in the universe. Your transmission creates your life, and it creates the world. The frequency you transmit reaches beyond cities, beyond countries, beyond the world. It reverberates throughout the entire universe, and you are transmitting that frequency with your thoughts. So in other words, you are essentially creating your own reality with your thoughts. And she openly admits that she got this idea from the ancient pagans, who more or less taught the same thing, or at least they did in the higher echelons of the pagan mystery schools. And again, this is a way of thinking that puts human beings at the very center of the universe. Let me read you just one more snippet from this book, because it really demonstrates what I'm getting at. This comes from the chapter that promises to teach you what you supposedly really are. It's a chapter called The Secret to You. She says, some of the greatest teachers and avatars describe the universe in the same way as Dr. Hagelin, by saying that all that exists is the one universal mind. And there is nowhere that the one mind is not. It exists in everything. The one mind is all intelligence, all wisdom, and all perfection, and it is everything and everywhere at the same time. If everything is the one universal mind and the whole of it exists everywhere, then it is all in you. Well, I'll give Ms. Byrne this. She's absolutely right that a lot of teachers have said this stuff over the centuries, but that's because this way of thinking dates all the way back to the earliest pagan cultures on the planet. They believed that you are God and God is you. You are the universe and the universe is you. All of us are made out of divine energy, and that means that we can become masters of our own destiny. So yes, I will concede it's a very old way of thinking, but I will not concede that it's true, because it isn't. And yet Ms. Byrne also insists that this way of thinking is taught in the pages of the Bible, and it is not. She says, and I quote, "The creative process used in The Secret, which was taken from the New Testament in the Bible, is an easy guideline for you to create what you want." No, it's not. This is not the teaching of the New Testament, not even close. It is the teaching of ancient Egypt. It is the teaching of ancient Greece, but it is not the way the Scriptures talk about the universe. The way the Bible describes it, you and I are not the center of attention. We are not the center of the universe, and we are certainly not the same as God. In fact, in the opening pages of the book of Genesis, we find a serpent suggesting something remarkably similar to the teachings of the secret. I'll show you what I mean. This is Genesis chapter 3, beginning in verse 1. It says, "Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, Has God indeed said, You shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, We may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, You shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. Then the serpent said to the woman, You will not surely die. For God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." What the Bible talks about is a deadly lie that the human race tragically bought, a suggestion that you and I can be like God. Now, to be sure, the Bible does say that we were made in the image of God, so there is a tiny degree of similarity, because you and I were supposed to reflect the one who made us. But the serpent's lie goes a lot further than that. It suggests that we can actually become like God, knowing the things that only God can know. And wouldn't you know it, all these ancient mystery cults said the very same thing. They said, you are part of the universe, a part of the divine mind of God, and you can transcend this humble physical existence and return to your rightful, exalted sphere out there in the spiritual realm. You, they said, are the point of the universe. And because you are part of the divine mind, you can actually bend the universe in your direction if only you knew how. That was precisely what the alchemists of the Middle Ages were actually trying to do. I know in school we learned that they were trying to turn lead into gold, and there is some evidence that some of them were doing that. And we even have some legends to suggest maybe some of them appeared to have been successful. But alchemy was not so much about magically producing gold as it was about proving that our human minds could actually control the universe. Remember, these people believed that all of us were originally part of the divine mind. So if that's true, they said, you could use that mind that you're part of to bend the universe in your direction. And a transmutation from lead into gold was symbolic of that. It would prove that it's possible. You know, when The Secret first hit bookshelves back in 2006, a lot of people were talking about that book like it was brand new information. But as Rhonda Byrne herself admits, this is some of the oldest information on the planet. And there is no way it can be reconciled with the teachings of the Bible. It might be Egyptian thinking, it might be Greek thinking, it might be Persian thinking, but it certainly is not biblical thinking. Writing to the Christians who lived in the city of Rome, the Apostle Paul describes the root of the problem that gave birth to this ancient pagan way of thinking. He says that way back in the distant past, we, quote, exchanged the truth of God for the lie and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator. What we did was mentally move the center of the universe away from the Creator, and we moved it on top of ourselves. And in just a few minutes, I'll come back and show you why that's such a huge problem. I'll be back after this.
Dragons, beasts, cryptic statues. Bible prophecy can be incredibly vivid and confusing. If you've ever read Daniel or Revelation and come away scratching your head, you're not alone. Our free Focus on Prophecy guides are designed to help you unlock the mysteries of the Bible and deepen your understanding of God's plan for you and our world. Study online or request them by mail and start bringing prophecy into focus today.
A little while ago, I came across a relatively recent book by Robert Lanza. It's called Biocentrism, and in here he takes a more scientific approach to some of the same kinds of ideas. It's not exactly the same, but the same kinds of ideas that the ancient pagans were teaching. Now, this book is easily far more scientific than Rhonda Byrne, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff in here. And at one point, he suggests that maybe in some ways, those ancient pagans had it right. And he does this by making an appeal to the strange world of quantum physics, which, admittedly, is really hard to wrap your mind around, because the physical laws of the subatomic world appear to be different from the larger physical world around us. Up here at our level, we use the science of physics to make reliable predictions, which helps us do things like engineer a bridge or calculate the path of a projectile. These are the physical laws that allowed us to escape gravity and start the age of space exploration. But then down in the subatomic world, the same kind of predictability, it's really hard to come by. In fact, what we're discovering is that subatomic particles actually change their behavior when you observe them. Before you observe them, particles behave like waves. But when you measure them, when you pay attention to what they're doing, the wave function suddenly collapses and they behave more like particles that exist in a specific time and place. So, what Robert Lanza does is suggest that our consciousness might actually be creating the world around us. To his way of thinking, that would explain why a photon does one thing when you don't measure it, but it does something completely different when you do. I mean, how in the world would a particle know that you're watching? Here's the way he addresses the problem. If most of the primary questions of the universe have traditionally been tackled by physicists attempting to create grand unified theories, exciting and glamorous as they are, such theories remain an evasion, if not a reversal of the central mystery of knowledge that the laws of the world somehow produced the observer in the first place. And this is one of the central themes of biocentrism in this book, that the animal observer creates reality and not the other way around. Now, I want to be fair to Dr. Lanza and not make a caricature out of this book, because it is an honest attempt to understand human consciousness, and it is based on real science. And it's not fair to lump his far more serious book in with a book like The Secret. But in a way, it's the same kind of thinking. It suggests that we are the center of the universe. And he openly admits, even though he's not quite willing to acknowledge the creator God of the Bible, that belief in a God of some kind does answer questions about the phenomenon of consciousness that modern science just can't explain. But again, it's this idea that the universe exists for us, and it doesn't. I mean, it might have been created for our benefit, but we are not the point of the universe. This is where all these ancient pagan theories about the nature of existence contradict the Bible. This is why, at the most fundamental level, paganism and Christianity can never agree. Let me give you an example of what the Bible teaches from something I was reading just the other day. This is Psalm 96, which is dedicated to the Creator. I only wish we had time to read the whole thing, but maybe I'll just pick it up in verse 10, where it says, "Say among the nations, the Lord reigns. The world also is firmly established, it shall not be moved. He shall judge the peoples righteously. Let the heavens rejoice, and let the earth be glad. Let the sea roar in all its fullness. Let the field be joyful in all that is in it. Then all the trees of the woods will rejoice before the Lord." Now, it's poetic language because obviously trees don't actually sing. But what it's telling us is that creation is here for the sake of the Creator. It was supposed to reflect His glory, but you and I have tried to make the universe a reflection of us, and we've attempted to remake this planet in our own image. You and I are a tiny speck on a much bigger creation, a speck that has gone completely off base. Instead of letting our lives also reflect the glory of the Creator like the rest of the universe, we have insisted that the universe should project our glory. And what we've done is ruin our potential for happiness, because you will never be able to satisfy the desires of a self-centered heart. And that's because you and I were never made to serve our own egos. You know, in that regard, I guess the pagans had it right. You and I really have fallen from a much higher plane of existence. But it's not because we were once gods. It's because we were once a perfect reflection of the beauty of God, and we destroyed that by making ourselves the central point. I'll be right back.
Are you searching for answers to life's toughest questions like, where is God when we suffer? Can I find real happiness? Or is there any hope for our chaotic world? The Discover Bible Guides will help you find the answers you're looking for. Visit us at BibleStudies.com or give us a call at 888-456-7933 for your free Discover Bible Guides. Study online on our secure website or have the free guides mailed right to your home. There is never a cost or obligation. The Discover Bible Guides are our free gift to you. Find answers in guides like Does My Life Really Matter to God? And A Second Chance at Life. You'll find answers to the things that matter most to you in each of the 26 Discover Bible Guides. Visit BibleStudies.com and begin your journey today to discover answers to life's deepest questions.
At the end of the Bible, there's this remarkable scene where God sends a final message to our broken planet, and He offers to restore us to our original state. Here's what it says. Then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God, and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment has come. And worship Him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and springs of water. It's a final appeal to worship the one who made. It's an appeal to return to what we were supposed to be, part of a perfect universe where all of creation was a song to the Creator. And in the final act of God's mercy to this world, He does not absorb us into the great mind of the universe the way the pagans believed, but He actually becomes one of us. And before the story is finished, this God in human flesh moves right here to this world with us. Revelation 21 says, And I heard a loud voice from heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and He will dwell with them, and they shall be His people. God Himself will be with them and be their God. I mean, listen, there are people out there telling you that you are the point of the universe. You're not. That doesn't mean you're not important or that God doesn't value you or notice you, because obviously He does. I mean, remember what Jesus taught in Matthew chapter 6. He said, Therefore I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air, for they neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? And the answer to that, of course, is yes, you are important. And the only way you're going to find peace of mind and an authentic human life is to put the center of the universe back where it belongs. This universe doesn't exist for your sake. But oddly enough, the one who made it, the Creator, He does exist for your sake. He gives everything He has to make sure that you can be a part of His universe and stay there forever. The universe does bend in God's direction, and He offers to share that with you. The Bible teaches that the universe really does sing, but it doesn't sing to you. It does invite you to join the song, and when you do, you're going to find out that a loving God really does bend in your direction. I'm Shawn Boonstra. Thanks for joining me. This has been Authentic.